good afternoon. What's the date today, Chris? Tuesday, April 8th, is that right?
That's the one. There
I
we
think
go.
it's Wednesday for some of us, actually, even.
Oh, it's
I
Wednesday.
suppose that's right, yeah. If you're
Wednesday for some people.
yeah. For those of you for whom it is Wednesday, we appreciate you coming in and checking us out. So this is the OpenSearch community meeting. Thanks for joining us. Before we start these off, we usually like to go over some etiquette. If you don't mind, I'll just take a second. If you do have something to say, we would love to hear who you are. So please do introduce yourself before speaking. Try to mute if you're not actively speaking, just in case background noise gets through. We don't want to interrupt our speakers. Cameras are, of course, optional. Ask questions at any time in chat or in audio, but if we do have a presenter who prefers to take questions at the end, or we will honor the preferences of a current speaker. And of course, if you're disruptive, we're just gonna have to remove you. Hope that's okay.
Works for me.
Awesome. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Hey, we've got some stuff coming up. Chris, you've been putting together some meetups, haven't you? Like a whole bunch of.
Got some really cool meetups coming. There's one in Dublin coming up. There's the link for it in chat. We're officially launching in Tel Aviv. Excited about this one. Here's a link to that, as well as one coming up in Munich, which if you're there, I will see you there. I'm excited to see everyone in the beautiful city of Munchen. We're always looking for presenters for these as well. Reach out if you want to present in any of the user groups. And we do have a whole page for user groups. We post that link also.
You've been to Munich before, Chris?
I have not yet been to Munich, so I'm really excited about this trip. Yes.
Awesome.
Very happy about this. I'm looking forward to it. We've got a few OpenSearch friends out there too.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Is Dotan's going to be at Tel Aviv, isn't he?
Dotan will be at Tel Aviv. Our friends from Eliatra will be in Dublin. And then Eliatra and our friends Julia and Lisa will be in Munich along with Aswath. So it's going to be a party.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, there's some good names to have. If I don't see them, please offer my thanks for their participation.
Absolutely. Our friends from Pulse and Hyperspace will be helping with Tel Aviv as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so those 3 meetups are coming up. Check out the page for details on those, and of course, Meetup has all of those meeting details as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sign yourself up so we know you're coming. Helps us know who's interested. Helps us gauge metrics on whether we're popular and cool.
And how much pizza to buy, of course, too.
Yeah, that helps. And perhaps just as exciting, we've got a number of OpenSearch cons coming up. The OpenSearch conference, OpenSearch Con. We've got OpenSearch Con Europe coming up April 30th through May 1st. That will be in Amsterdam. And of course, there's the link for it right there. Yep, there it is. And OpenSearch Con India, June 3rd and 4th in Bangalore. And OpenSearch Con North America, September 8th to 10th. That'll be in San Jose.
I will be at EU and NA if anyone wants to meet me. And then we actually have one of the speakers from EU in the room. Munir will be speaking at that event. He's my colleague at NetApp InstaCluster.
Super cool.
Wonderful. Have we met Munir before?
You might have. It would have been at Munir. Have you met them?
Yeah, I was in OpenSearch Con NA last year, and this time I will be presenting in the OpenSearch Con Europe, and I'm planning to attend OpenSearch Con India also.
Nice,
wonderful. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, so I was probably in San Francisco when we met you the first time.
That sounds right. Yeah, San Jose maybe.
Wonderful. So Kassian, who's on camera here, they are going to present from NetApp, why content, no, not just docs, needs more love from the OpenSearch community. And it does. That's a very apropos topic. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I don't think I have any more announcements. Chris, do you have anything for the good of the order?
No, I think you've covered everything, man.
Awesome. Well, then I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to Kassian. Are you ready to take the stage? Do your thing? You are muted, by the way, just in case.
Yeah, I actually, funny story. So I used to work for Zoom, and one of my favorite swag pieces they ever sent me was a T-shirt that says "You're on mute." It's so funny. I love that shirt to pieces.
That's
I wear it every meeting. every meeting gets clean. I wear it because it's like you're on mute. Anyway, so I'm Kassian Wren. I use they, them pronouns. And I am here to talk about why content, no, not just docs, needs more love from OpenSearch. There is a lot going on in OpenSearch right now between moving to the Linux Foundation, having some key contributors added to the roster, things like that. The OpenSearch 3.0 release is coming up. There's a lot going on in this ecosystem. And I feel like we have a great place to tell a story with OpenSearch's content. And so I feel like this talk is kind of aimed at anyone who's interested in helping the OpenSearch project, because they definitely need help with docs and content. So I will first tell a little bit about me, because this is my first time meeting many of you. I do DevRel for NetApp Instacluster, focusing mainly on OpenSearch. I have written and delivered both content and technical documentation for over a decade, and I've been involved with one open source community or another since around 2017 officially, but I'd been doing open source robotics before that for a little while. So I have a little open source experience. So when I talk about content and I say, no, it's not just docs, what does content mean then? But first, let's talk about a little about open source and what it is. It's way more than just code. It's a culture, it's a way of life, and it's a lot of free, unpaid time and work. Some people get paid for it, and that's great. But the majority of open source developers just do what they do because they love it, and that's great. That passion and that drive and that time are what keeps these projects going. So open source is kind of code plus time plus writing plus speaking plus arguments and GitHub issues and all these things, release notes. Sometimes at the end, people think about content. Now, because OpenSearch or open source does most of its, actually nearly all of its conversations out in the open, everything you say is in front of a virtual crowd, and everything you say is taken down, right? So like all of the arguments are written down for posterity's sake, not just because there needed to be an argument about this API or whatever. Content is the information that is put out about your project, either by you or a third party. These tend to be blog posts, videos, tutorials, issue tracking, release notes. Of course, documentation does fall into this category, but getting started and on-ramps are part of content. Pieces that are in the intermediate level are definitely part of content, because I can count. I can't count on the two hands that I have. I would need many more fingers. The projects that have getting started ramps and then you just fall off. There's nothing left. So, and content tells users a lot about a project. Like when you look at a GitHub project and you're evaluating whether you're going to use it, what are you going to look at? You're going to look at the stars, you're going to look at the forks, you're going to look at the issues, you're going to look at and you're also going to look at the content. You're going to Google blank tutorials and see what shows up. Content is the more easily digestible form of the network of communications that makes up an open source project, if that makes sense. So like this web of interconnected conversations gets distilled into these pieces of content that people who were not part of the original conversation can still extract information out of. So Google searches for your project. Where do they land? Will users find what they're looking for? Will it be on your project site or will it be on a company's site? It really depends on how you manage your content, because you cannot fully manage your content. Hopefully, I would think someone else who isn't you is going to write about your project, right? So it's not about controlling content completely, but it's about helping to shape the way that content is created by creating a good foundation for them to build off of. So content tells the story about the project. It tells you a lot about the health of the community. And the open source's project story is whatever your content shapes it to be. No matter what you talked about in GitHub issues, no matter how many times you emailed each other back and forth about this particular argument, in this particular function, or this particular refactor, users don't see that. That's not what comes up in Google searches. We're not expecting them to do that. We're not expecting them to dig through hours and days of issues and logs, right? So the content informs users how to use the project in the first place. So it can, if you let it, turn into a cycle where the content affects the project, which affects the content, which affects the project, which can be a beneficial relationship, but it can also be a very unstable one. So it's something to keep in mind. And like I said, users don't see everything that goes into the project and why your project does what it does and why you're doing what you're doing. They see what they can get their hands on via a search and what's easiest to digest and think about. And that's not because we're lazy, and it's not because, or anything else. It's just time. We don't have a lot of time on our hands in a daily basis. If you're evaluating different search platforms, you're going to be pretty busy. There are lots of different search platforms out there. So, you want to get your hands on that information easily, and you want it to be easy to digest and think about so that you can reason about it within the rest of the project. This means your project's uses, performance, APIs are all informed by either the community or yourselves, depending on who does the content. So unless you provide the content for yourselves, there's basically two paths projects tend to go down. One is no one writes it and the project flounders because no one outside of the immediate community can figure out how to use it because they weren't involved and there's no content for them to kind of bring in. And then third parties write it, and they can miss technical details. They can miss skills relevant to your project. They can miss a lot of things if you didn't, give them a foundation to build off of for that content. So let's talk a little bit about how content is made, not in the nitty gritty, like I take out my camera and but more of like how the content flow goes through an open source project. Someone takes an interest in a project and they kind of start to lurk. They will look at issues at this point. If they're looking to make content, they will look at issues sometimes at this point. They will look at, how many stars the project has, how healthy it is, when it was last pushed to, things like that. They'll lurk and they'll kind of look around, and then they might take some pokes at the docs after a while to see if they can contribute. I'll go into this in a little bit, but a side tangent. If you don't treat your content tickets like any other ticket, they're never going to get done. Surprise! If you put it on another list, it's never going to get done. Also, it's really, really hard for people to contribute to your content if they don't know where the content holes are. And a really easy way for you to do that is to put up a GitHub issue saying like, hey, we could really use some content over how to use this particular setup function or configuration option or whatever. So then they find a topic they like, maybe within the project, like they think, this particular function is really cool, or this particular feature is really cool, so I'm going to write about that. They record something, etc. about that topic, and they post it on the internet. If that content becomes easy to find, it becomes a part of your project story. It just kind of gets tacked on there And because especially with today's search algorithms and things, if a piece goes viral about your project, that is what people are going to see first. Is not necessarily what you wrote and what you did, but what this person did. So you always have to keep in mind with third-party content that like you have to make sure that the project is well represented, or you want to make sure the project is well represented. So who makes content? Honestly, anybody can make content that is involved with the project, even and especially new people. For instance, I wrote a blog post series called OpenSearch from Scratch because I had to learn OpenSearch from scratch several months ago. And so I wrote about not only the good things that OpenSearch brought me, but the tougher parts of like finding my way through things like that. That's content. That's a way someone could get involved with OpenSearch as a project, is by following along with those projects. So this has pros and it has cons. The pros is free publicity for your project and maybe some more attention to it. There are some cons in that what if the content creator misses a key feature? What if they disagree with choices made because they don't see how they were reasoned out? If you don't foster a good relationship with your community and open yourselves up to give feedback to these third-party creators, they're just going to write what they want to write, and that can be tricky. And the number one reason content around a project flounders is a lack of cohesion and a lack of shared knowledge. For instance, if I were to walk up to an open source project and say, "Hi, I like to contribute to docs. How can I help?" and they stare at me blankly, I'm not gonna go figure out what the problem is. Like I might, but it might not be the way the project, was intending to do, etc. So, and a lack of cohesion means, you want your content to send a similar message about the product, about its features, about its performance, about whatever. So you want that consistency in your content, because otherwise it'll just confuse users if they get two different sets of information. So here's why it can be hard to write content for open source, because it really, really can be hard to do that. Number one, I find, is the lack of technical information available. Because for instance, if you gave a kid a Lego Star Wars set with no instructions, would you end up with the Star Wars set you thought you were going to get? Probably not, right? You're going to get something completely different. Or even an adult, if they haven't seen Star Wars, especially, like they would build whatever they wanted. And so if they don't have instructions, users may do things you've never intended. They may miss critical issues or configurations or ways to really make your project shine. So that's number one reason it can be really hard to write content for open source. Number two, I kind of hinted at this earlier, is a lack of cohesion and community. The one thing is, if the project doesn't know the content was written, if it's out there, it's still out there, and it's still writing the story of your project, whether you like it or not. But at the same time, if you have a really great piece of content from a third party or a first party and it can't be found, is it helping anyone? Probably not. Number three is not working with the community. If your team doesn't work with the community, the content will be scattered in both quality and locatability. I find that being an open source documentation and content person is a lot like being a kind of like a field goalie for football for the rest of the world, and soccer for us Americans. You're stopping critical issues from getting into the goal. You're getting into your goals. You're picking them back and throwing them back out there. Maybe they need a little more work, and then they come back in and score a goal. That it's not the best analogy I've come up with, but I'll get there one of these days. This is a big one for me. Lack of inclusive spaces in tech communities. If you do not foster a truly open and inclusive space, you are arbitrarily shrinking your pool of contributors, content creators, anything, fans, whatever. You are arbitrarily shrinking your pool of talent by saying, no, we do not care about the inclusivity of our culture, or, oh, we're just going to let that guy keep doing that, even though it's against our code of conduct because he wrote a lot of the code, you see, things like that. And always take out the trash, which is transphobia, racism, ableism / ageism, sexism, and homophobia. Please take all of the garbage, all the trash out of your community, and I will appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about working with parties to create content, because while you can't control what third parties write about you, you can definitely help them out and, say, hey, here's some documentation or some information that might make your piece a little bit more, a little bit better. And so, there's definitely a beneficial relationship to working with these third parties to create this content, not just from your side, but from their side as well. They have something to gain as well. So this one isn't hard, for me at least. I've figured this part out. Basically, what you want to do is you want to locate your champions. Your champions are the people who already really like the product and are the project. Sorry, not product, project, and want to use it and want to talk about it. Enable them. I call them champions. Enable, enable, enable. Make sure their blog posts get reviewed in a timely manner. Make sure that when they raise an issue about content that you're paying attention. And also the most important part is to make sure the information they need to write the content is available in accessible ways. This means better documentation. This means first-party tutorials, and this means first-party content. It's a lot of work that I'm asking you to do. Like the actual connection with the community isn't hard, but it is a lot of hard work to review blog posts and videos and stuff from people who didn't actually work on the project, but it can really help both the content creator and the project if you can work together and sync things out beforehand. Also, providing a solid foundation of first-party content allows the creation of better third-party content. So what you can do to help both now and in the future. Number one is get involved. If you want to get involved with OpenSearch content, Nate and Chris are your points of contact. I am trying to get involved in OpenSearch content myself. I've created a couple video series and a couple blog posts, and I will be working more closely with them in the future to make sure my content aligns with the OpenSearch project. Getting involved is hard. Getting involved is easily the biggest ask I have. Because I'm asking you for your time and I'm not paying you for it. And that's a really tough sell. But it is important to do this. It is an important part of the launch of a project. Number two is to help, even if you can't write the content, help identify content needs and convey them to the project team. Even if you don't know how to write the blog post that explains the configuration option that's nested 3 levels deep that can boost your performance by 3 times. It's maybe they can't write that post, but they can say, hey, I noticed that when I flipped this switch, it got a lot faster. What does this switch do? And then that kind of leads to oh, well, we need a content ticket to address this, things like that. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I really appreciate it. I'm Kassian Wren. You can reach me at kassian.wren@netapp.com. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Okay. Sounds like we're good. All right. I will hand it back to Nate and Chris.
Well, thanks so much for your time there, Kassian. It's always good to hear about these kinds of things. I think you've made a lot of good points about how the content that people create for your project, tell your project story. And it's not always the case that these things are easily findable and even make their way onto official outlets or anything like that. And that the result of what people Google for is the story that gets told. And so you're spot on.
The joke I didn't tell was what happens when you Google OpenSearch tutorials. Because when you Google OpenSearch tutorials, I don't know if you've ever done that, it gives you Elasticsearch.
Huh.
Which is not the same thing.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to comment.
Yeah. So I left that joke out of my slides, but yeah, that is definitely something that like
too late now.
So we're needing more tutorials from the community. Sounds like that's it.
Yeah, and a good place to collect them and a good place to distribute them as well would also be handy.
We're always open to pieces on the blog, and Patty can speak to that as well. But yeah, we're always taking input from the community. We're always looking to get content from the community in a good way, is either reaching out by Slack or opening an issue on the project website repository. So that'll kick us right into gear. Getting those things published.
We're pretty active on Slack.
As Chris talks about it right now, Cassie, I'm just in the process of slacking you about taking this and turning it into a blog.
Yeah,
and
gladly.
I definitely want to talk to you more about video. So yeah, let's do it. We have a venue, we have a way of doing it, and I would love to work with you to do that.
And that
sounds great.
That goes to anyone watching this video later as well.
Exactly. It's not just people like me who are standing up here. It's everybody. Everybody contributes to content. Everybody has something that they can give to content. And everybody has a part to tell in the story of an open source project.
Spot on. That's
for sure. I'll take them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of show and tell. You know, it really is. You don't have to be a programmer or a content creator. You know, even if you just like showing and telling, hey, I read this really interesting thing. I saw someone use OpenSearch in this way, and you know, you want to talk about it. That you know, you don't always have to make some you know, gigantic contribution to the arts and sciences that you know, to share something useful. It still helps tell the story. It still brings information to the public, and it's still useful.
Open source projects are not built by one giant contribution. They are built by a million tiny contributions.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, now is when I would normally open it up to just generic questions and answers. Does anyone in the audience have gripes, show and tells, anything that they've come across that they'd like clarification on? How was everyone's weekend? Did anyone here make it to KubeCon? Any other KubeCon people here?
I live vicariously through you and Nate, or you and Chris and Patty and LinkedIn.
KubeCon. It was great. We're all a little jet lagged, but
it sounded like y'all had a lot of fun. The booth pictures were very good.
Hey, you put us together in a booth and we have fun no matter what. We're gonna make it fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, you keep me filled with coffee, and I'll entertain whomever.
Coffee makes a lot of us go.
It does. The lubricant of KubeCon's honest commerce. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that we have no open Q&A questions. Or Chris, did you think of anything else you wanted to share about the meetups or anything else the world needs to know?
No, we've got all the links out there, and we'll post those to the forum as well.
Nice.
You can always. We look forward to seeing you there.
It'll be great.
It's going to be awesome. All right.
Sounds like that's it.
Yeah. Open forum, last chance. Patty, James, anything to share or add or awesome.
Nothing from me. Thanks, y'all.
Well, as usual, here is our official social handles if you want to reach out to us. And I guess we can call that a wrap.
There's also a Slack, right?
There is a Slack.
There should, yeah, we should put it because that's a community Slack, right?
Yeah, we got some updating to do.
Yeah, we should put the community Slack link up there.
It's just slack.html, I think. Yeah, there it is.
It's definitely the easiest way to reach any of us is public Slack.
Yeah.
There you go.
Especially when your email gets choked with all of those GitHub requests.
Story of my life.
Yes.
Story of every successful open source project person's life. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And thank you, Nathan and Chris, for having me. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for coming.
Always a pleasure.